Welcome back. Now, today marks 62 years since the Sharpeville massacre, where 69 unarmed people, black people at that, were killed by apartheid police. They were protesting against past laws. And for more on Human Rights Day, we're now joined by the president of the Black Consciousness Movement, United, Mr. Hlulani Mabasa. Mr. Mabasa, thank you for your time and happy Human Rights Day today. Good to have you on this day. I mean, let's take it back. I suppose asking you the significance of today, the question around naming today's Sharpeville Day keeps popping up, not only on social media, but in conversations I had with JJ Tabane, Professor Tinyoko Maluleke, and they're saying, don't call an orange a fruit, call it a fruit. Don't minimize, the significance of this day. It is Sharpeville Day. What are your views on this?
Well, thanks a lot for having us here. I think one thing which we should start off by saying is that memory is the privilege of the living, which then implies that if you accept that premise that memory is for the living, you then will continue to call things as they are. I mention this in particular because to call this day Human Rights Day is to draw it, to drain out its essence in terms of what it means. And what it means the ability for black people to stand up, the courage for them to stand up against a system that was oppressing them and continues to oppress us. So it is very disturbing that today we continue, led by this particular government, to find ourselves using euphemisms to try and explain away perhaps the great historical strides that black people have made, as well as to try and exonerate white people in the things that they have done. For instance, consider that the Jews, with regards to what had happened to them through the Holocaust, will not change the name from Holocaust to something else, because it is necessary for those who are living to remember that this is what has happened to them as a people. Therefore, even in our case, it becomes absolutely quite berserk to even think for a moment that we should use such euphemisms to explain away the courage that has been demonstrated by our people, the resilience that has been demonstrated by our people, and above that, the fact that we should draw strength from their courage and from their sacrifice.
Is there will from government, in your perspective, to actually change the name, call it what it is, and commemorate it with the significance that it deserves? Is there that political and will from government?
Well, I doubt that it's possible for the government to do that, because it's not only Sharpeville massacre, which has been changed. It's also June 16, the Soweto uprising. So you see a concerted effort on the part of the establishment to ensure that these days are not called what they are, because I suppose they are afraid that it will bring bad memories to those who are the direct benefiters of colonialism. At the same time, they are distorting history. So I do not think from the position of the state that there is any effort in terms of doing that, because to do that, it means that you have to put black people first. You have to put their story first. You have to accentuate the meaning of the black experience. And in that way, you are able, one way or another, to inspire the people, but more than that, to tell them that they matter. And that is why I start off by saying that memory is the privilege of the living. Yeah. Now, because they don't consider us as human beings, because they don't consider us as living, that memory has been taken away from us, because we're as good as dead to them.
I want to move away from the day for just a moment, Mr. Mabasa, and talk about those 69 souls that were lost that day. I was speaking to David O'Sullivan saying that is not just a number. Those are human beings, family members. Those are fathers and mothers, activists who, of course, place their lives on the line for that peaceful protest in the hope that, of course, their concerns would be heard. And unfortunately, lives were lost on their day. One of the unsung heroes that he brought to our attention was Nyakani Tsolo, who as well played quite a significant role. And I just wonder, what would it take for the government to ensure there is healing and restoration from those victims as well as their loved ones at this point? Because the truth of the matter is the victims as well as their families at this point still haven't healed. There's so many family members who have vivid memories of how their fathers were killed, how their mothers were taken away from them. And it seems those wounds are still fresh, even 62 years later.
Well, I think one thing which is very important is that we must also consider it's women and children who form part of also that 69 group. So in order for them to heal, or what the government can do, it will be very difficult for the government in this current condition and in the way it's running the country at the moment to be able to bring some kind of healing. Yes, it might be possible that maybe they might do it as a political stunt or some kind of media posture to go to the families and try and make sure that they get certain things. But you must bear in mind, if that government does that, if this government does that, at the same time, what then happens with regards to white supremacy, which is directly responsible for this? And therefore, that is why for some of us, we see that this government is actually an extension of the government of yesterday, or for the regime of yesterday. So in order for a proper healing to be done, you need to go to the root of the problem. What were they fighting for? Has the land been brought back? Have black people found themselves in a better condition now than they were in the past? No, they have not done so. So you need quite a large, worldview to be able to address those things. You need to go deep and search deep in terms of what really has to happen. I think in order for us to make sure we remedy some kind of justice and healing for the dead, you do so with the living. They are children, they are people, the race which they belong to. You do that for them in order for us to really try and say we're trying to sort out, or we're trying to move towards a direction of healing. But as we stand and as the things stand today, it's very easy for black people to lose their lives, and it's not an issue. We see the remnants of the massacres all over the world, all over the places, all over the institutions. We see that with Marikana. We see that on a daily. Whether you look at it in allegorical terms or in concrete reality, the lives of black people don't matter. Now, until this government decides to put black people first, to put their demands first, their political will first, and their political objectives first, it will become extremely difficult for them to do anything. And in fact, for us in the Black Consciousness Movement United, we doubt and highly doubt that these guys are capable of doing that.
Well, I appreciate your time in speaking out and speaking to me this morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Hlulani Mabasa from the Black Consciousness Movement United, joining us about the significance of today, the lack of will to change this day to Sharpeville Day, it seems, from government, but also how there still needs to be a lot to be done in terms of commemorating the day with the significance that it does deserve.